AMT's Mack R kit provides two mirror options, and the standard version, shown on the instruction sheet here, consists of a fair number of parts, which when glued together are fairly strong and actually quite accurate when compared to a 1:1 scale truck mirror, with the biggest difference being the rather coarse attachment points for the mirror heads, and the fact that the mirror is actually attached on the real truck a little farther back than the pre-drilled holes on the AMT cab. The other difficulty with using kit parts is removing parting lines from round surfaces and maintaining the round cross-section. I chose to use the kit mirror heads and use the kit parts for the arms as patterns for scratch-built parts made from 40 thou styrene rod. I started off by filling the pre-drilled holes in the cab, which are circled here. Using the kit parts as a guide, new holes are drilled to fit 40 thou styrene rod, with the forward pair of holes in line with the vent window vertical piece, and the rear pair of holes drilled on an angle. Real truck mirror brackets are made of hollow tube with the ends flattened. On the model, this is simulated by using styrene rod and flattening the ends as shown here. The best tool for this job is a small pair of smooth jaw pliers, similar to these ones. The top bracket is made first by inserting two pieces of 40 thou styrene rod with a flattened end into the cab and temporarily gluing in place with either white glue or, as I've used here, yellow carpenter's glue. The top bracket is installed first because it's fairly easy to align, coming off straight from the side of the cab. Overlap the flattened ends and glue them together with solvent cement. Because of the difficulty in making 90-degree bends in styrene rod, the most challenging parts to make on this project are the U-shaped pieces to which the mirror heads are bolted. The initial pair of 90-degree bends is made here, and a simple jig was made using styrene sheet to hold accurate 90-degree bends in the piece so that some heat could be applied to set the bends. 80 thou styrene sheet was used for the base section, and a piece of 40 thou with a U-shaped cutout to match the outside of the mirror arm was glued on top. Another section of 40 thou styrene sheet was cut to match the size of the inside of the mirror arm, and this is held in place by the last piece, also made from 80 thou styrene for strength, which sits on top and has the two corners cut out to allow heat to be applied to the 90-degree bends. Sections of styrene strip on either side hold everything in alignment, and binder clips are used to clamp everything together. I use a full-strength heat gun on the lower setting, and some trial and error is required. You don't need a lot of heat, just enough to cause the styrene rod to take a set. Taken out of the jig after cooling, the mirror bracket now holds the 90-degree bends at the top and bottom corners. Making one part is relatively easy. Making multiple parts consistent is always more challenging, and to make this easier, another jig was created using styrene strip and sheet for both cutting the mirror arms to length and marking out the flattened portions. The small pieces of 60 thou square strip provide a guide to mark a pencil line, which will be where the flattened portion starts. Consistent length top and bottom is set by the other pair of strips, which guide a single edge razor blade to make a plunge cut. Ends are flattened using the smooth jaw pliers, with the pencil lines being used for accurate location to ensure the flattened portion at the top and bottom is equal in length. The U-shaped part is now glued to the first two pieces that are already attached to the truck cab, with it angled back slightly, as shown in the picture here. At this stage of assembly, the mirror bracket looks like this, with the upper section glued temporarily to the cab and the U-shaped section glued in place and ready to receive the lower arms. These lower pieces also have the end flattened and are inserted into drilled holes. A bit of trial and error bending is required to get the right bend angle on the flattened portion to glue onto the U-shaped part of the mirror head as shown here. Other side is assembled the same way. You can see the excess length of the mirror arm sticking into the cab. This will be trimmed off as the next step. Flush with the inside of the cab shell so they can be reinstalled accurately later in the assembly sequence. For now, the mirrors are taken off of the cab, and a vernier caliper is used to transfer the hole location to a piece of 60 thou by 15 thou styrene strip, which is then drilled to match the hole location on the cab shell. These strips will represent the flattened portion of the mirror bracket which bolts to the cab door. The next step in the assembly process is to slide these onto the mirror brackets, which are then reinstalled in the drilled holes, placing the ends of the 40 thou styrene rod flush to the inside of the cab shell for accurate location. Lightly tack glue these pieces in place. This is best done with a small drop of medium gel CA superglue rather than solvent cement because the mirrors still have to be made removable for final assembly. Flatten the ends of another piece of 40 thou styrene rod and install the diagonal bracket as shown here. Solvent cement can be used for this installation if it's done carefully on the upper bracket. With the diagonal brace added, the mirror assembly is surprisingly strong and can be removed from the truck for final gluing and cleanup. Excess material is trimmed off the ends of the 15 thou by 60 thou wide styrene strips, and these are rounded off to match the diameter of the styrene rod. This is done to create the appearance of a triangular bracket being made from one piece of tube bent into a triangle shape and flattened where it bolts to the truck door. The last step is simulating fasteners, which is done using 20 thou brass wire glued into holes drilled in the flattened portions, and micromarks O-scale decal rivets on the sections where the mirror would attach to the cab. Removing chrome plating from the kit mirror heads results in parts which are actually fairly nicely done and only need a small amount of work to make them even better. Remove the ejector pin marks and the oversized mounting points, highlighted in red on the left-hand mirror, and replace the mounting points with 20 thou brass wire as shown on the right-hand one. The mirror heads are thick enough that it's easy to drill a 20 thou hole without breaking through on either side. Using one of the kit mirror heads as a guide, before I installed the brass wire, I made an 016 sheet copper template to cut reflective material to put on the mirror heads after painting. The bent metal pieces, which attach the mirror heads to the arms, were made by cutting 5 thou brass shim into strips 60 thou wide and bending around a piece of 40 thou styrene rod. Similar to what was done when making the U-shaped arms for the mirror brackets, simple styrene jigs were created to ensure that all 4 mounting tabs for the mirror heads were identical. A piece of 30 thou square brass was clamped in place first as a locating guide for the drilled hole. These holes are drilled to match the 20 thou brass wire, which has already been installed in the mirror heads. L-shaped bottom piece provides a positive location, and the tabs on the top piece are held down with a binder clip. 3/32 wide brass strip is now set in place to act as a cutting guide for a plunge cut using a single edge razor blade. One pair of mounting tabs completed, ready to snap into place on the mirror bracket. Fit the brass wire pins on the mirror heads through the holes in the mounting tabs, clamp everything together with fine point tweezers, and apply a small drop of CA glue to complete the assembly process. Mirrors on the truck I was modeling were Fleet Spec black painted, so I used Tamiya flat black. If they were stainless, Alclad's chrome over their gloss black base is an excellent choice. Reflective material was cut using the copper template, and here it's shown applied to the mirror on the left side. Because the mirror brackets fit into drilled holes in the cab shell, they can easily be set in place during the mock-up stage as shown here. Although installing the mirrors into drilled holes and simulating the flattened portion with styrene strip may not be 100% accurate, it's a good overall compromise for scale modeling purposes. Spot mirrors are now in place. Construction of these was covered in a separate video, which is also part of the Mack R600 playlist. With the cab in white primer, passenger side mirror is set in place. And the same with the driver's side. Any gluing will be done from inside the cab shell at final assembly, making for a very clean installation with a nice crisp color separation. And closing with a different view of the driver's side mirror, now in place on the completed model. Although it's a little bit of work up front to make the jigs, they'll always be on hand in the tool collection and will make creating mirrors for future Mack truck projects a lot easier. Thanks for watching this little how-to, and give scratch building mirrors a try in your next model truck project.